In.
Good, good. How are you, Alan?
Good, thanks.
So, the purpose of this interview is actually to find out more about the Wonder Method's approach to helping empaths feel more grounded, and also how they can use their gifts, their sensitivity more, I guess, more efficiently, more productively to make it possible to have a joyous life. Because
Excellent.
in my experience, I've met many empaths, and they seem to think it's a curse rather than a gift, and they have to manage it on a daily basis. And some of my clients, it seems to be a common practice to build up things like auric shields to be able to practice letting go, so that they don't feel drained on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe let's go to the questions I've written down, and I'll
Sounds
just
good.
ask you. Okay, so my first question is, I think many empaths feel their ability to be more sensitive to others' allergies a weakness that needs to be managed more than a gift. So what is your view on this?
Okay, so first let's just state that an empath tends to feel what's around them within themselves. Partly that's because their focus is outside, not necessarily consciously,
Okay.
but that's it. They're experiencing their environment versus themselves. And when you focus on the environment, your attention is more out here than in here. Now, most people live that way. So a lot of people don't feel anything, whereas the empath does. They feel kind of an ambiance of the energy around them. When someone's upset, they feel the upset, and it's like a wave hitting them, and it's kind of overpowering. That said, if they're aware of their own internal vibration, some would call it, or their own stuff as a focus versus the outside, then it's easier to manage because you won't be overwhelmed by what's outside you. That takes practice. The Wonder Method's purpose is to unwind what appears to be problematic. So we would process our view that these outside energies knock us over and influence us strongly. As we did that, we would unwind that belief system, if you will, that we have to be focused out there and interact with what's out there. And in so doing, we would start to find ourselves within it. And as we find ourselves within it, then we become the dominant vibration. And, sure, if somebody, is riding a bike and falls over or something, we feel badly for them, we'll go help them. But we don't take on the vibe because we're aware of us as the dominant vibration versus all these other things that are influencing us as the dominant vibrations. Does that clarify for you?
Yeah.
The view, or is there more questions there?
That can sound quite scary, to have the courage to really tune into yourself as opposed to feeling the outside world, because we are so used to it.
That's right. But if they consider it a weakness, if they consider their life very difficult to live because they're influenced by these outside feelings, then it doesn't take a lot of courage.
Yeah.
In fact, it becomes a sanctuary.
Yes.
Because as you unwind the need to reach or It's not even necessarily a need. It's more intrinsic. It's just there, it seems like. But once you start being aware of your own stuff, and your stuff, if you're truly processing, if you're unwinding what's in the way of your world and the balance within it, you find that there's quiet here and there's balance throughout the body. And because there's balance and quiet there, you're happy. Now, there's lots of models that do that within the Winter method. We use feeling. Some people use shields, but then you're always maintaining the shield.
Yeah.
And if it's a really bad day, you're making that shield thicker and stronger. And some days it works and some days it doesn't. And then you're scrambling to find out what to do. And then you don't want to go outside because of what you might encounter. And there's just this whole tumbling going on about how to live. Again, if you go into feeling and unwind the fears, and they're really not that bad. The fear that they're going to be terrible is really the worst part of it. The good news is, as they unwind, they actually feel better. And the willingness to sensate versus interpret the sensations is what sets us free. Because the sensations themselves don't have all this mind attachment to them. They're not named. They're not followed to the nth degree. They're just you in the moment. And that creates centeredness and balance.
Yes. It feels like there's also a need to want to get intuitive information to, I guess intuitive readings can seem more useful or interesting because of this overwhelm from the outside world. So how do we get into this model of just feeling?
Well, there's a lot of ways to get into just feeling, but really it's unwinding what makes you believe you already can't.
Okay.
And if you want to be intuitive, still you can be, but you can filter it. Because within the Wonder method, we're feeling us about 90+%. And then we just let in, this tiny little amount. And we can rate that or gradate that. Gradations, in other words. So if you're 90% you, this is a light touch from outside. And if you need to be, you can be 99.999% you. And only let in that 0.0001. And so what you sense from outside you is very manageable. And yet you still can sense if you need to. And that's done, you learn how to do that by experimentation somewhat. But most people are always reaching outwards. I need to know what's out there. No. It's putting out an energy. It'll come to you. Why do you think it bothers you to begin with? Because it's broadcasted. And you believe you need to take it on or interpret it or use it in some way. You don't. You don't have to. You've chosen to, or maybe you feel like it's chosen you to. But it's still a choice. And that choice is an opportunity to invite change if you want to. If you like the drama, because that's what you're living, right? You're living this drama of, oh my God, this is overwhelming. It gives you a lot to talk about with friends, how terrible it is and all this. It's a thing you build your life around. It's become your belief system, and as such, your world. Changing that will change how you talk to others. You will become more average in a way. But at the same time, you'll be happier because you won't be crushed by those experiences. And when you need to have information, you can choose to let it in. But it'll be a choice because you'll actually turn the dial a little bit and allow it in. And when you don't need it, you'll just have the dial focused within you instead of out there. Of course, you'll still interact with others. And it'll take some practice because you have to break an old habit.
Mm-hmm.
Does that clarify, or does that bring up other questions?
So if one is new to the Wonder method and like to change their view of how they work as empaths, do they unwind the belief system first?
You'd have two choices.
Yeah.
Within the Wonder method, we start with what's called the breath with wonder.
Mm-hmm.
That presents a flow within you. It's just what happens as you pay attention to that. So you could use that to begin the process of understanding what's you and what's not you.
Yes.
Because it would be a dominant vibration, so to speak. So when you do the breath with wonder, do you feel you more than you do what's around you initially? So that isolates you to some degree.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop you from interacting. It just shows you more as you. In a sense, it puts you within your own field instead of influenced by the other field. If you choose to include someone else in your awareness, then you have a link. But if your focus is on the internal opening as the dominant feature, what you experience from others is minimal, just tiny. So that's one way.
Mm-hmm.
I would call that the Band-Aid approach. I don't have anything better yet, so I will use this.
Okay.
Independent of that is the processing arm, where we feel our feelings and unwind them until balance is the result. And we have what we call 4 steps, but really there's 2 steps. There's the unwinding what's upsetting and unwinding the positive as well, that which you want, because much of what we want, we fear that we can't have it.
Yeah.
So in both cases, it's still an unwinding, but eventually we get to go, cool, man. Because eventually you'll come into balance. It takes, some time and some effort. But if it's applied regularly, usually within a few weeks, most people can experience themselves as the dominant vibration, so to speak. And they can choose to tune into others or not, as they prefer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see the other questions. Okay, about asking for permission. As empaths feel so deeply and strongly, they may feel called to do healing on other people whom are hurting. So is it all right to offer healing without conscious permission?
In my opinion, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That said, why do you feel compelled to do healing work? Is what I would ask them. If they feel that it's because they feel so deeply that they should, well, that's a personal choice.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say, I can't do otherwise, that too is a personal choice. They may believe that it's not, but it still is. And that's because, again, history. Your beliefs say, if I don't help this person, I'm going to feel worse than if I do help this person. But then there comes in fear, but if I don't have their permission, can I do it? Well, within the Wonder method, we don't send, we don't press, we don't push. We don't try and change the individual. We open. Now, the empath is going to say, oh, you're going to open and let that in. But if you remember from the earlier statement, we're establishing us as a dominant vibration of us. In other words, experiencing our being. When we include another person to do healing work, we're letting in 1/10 or less of the original vibe. We're not asking them to change. We're allowing their upset to encounter balance and unwind at its rate. So we're not putting anything on the client or the person that we're passing that's upset. We're allowing them to experience the opportunity to reestablish balance. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Does it feel complete, or does it feel like there's more there?
So it's actually a very gentle way of doing healing in a way that the recipient can allow, right?
Right.
Energetically.
So if you think of most everybody as broadcasting,
Uh,
and the broadcast hits you, they're putting out the vibe. Why not let it in while staying aware of your own self and allow it to change? In a sense, we're allowing it to change so that we feel balanced, because we may notice something. And at this point, the client has an opportunity to change as well. They don't have to change. They can stay in their anger. But the interesting thing is, as they experience someone else demonstrating balance, they will naturally gravitate towards balance. So you're not even working on them in isolation, so to speak, in the sense of changing them. You're working on your response to the experience, and they happen to gain benefit as well as you.
Yeah. So it's unwinding your own reaction to anything or anyone that bothers you.
That's right. And it can be as simple as, oh, I knocked a cup over, to, gosh, war somewhere, whatever's seemingly influencing you, or that you prefer to affect.
Okay.
Or at least affect your response to, and as such, begin to change the reality around you. Because reality begins to get very flexible, called malleable. The whole fabric of reality has an opportunity to shift. It doesn't have to stay as it appears to be. That's a mindset. The mindset holds it stationary. The opening of body-mind integration begins to set us free. And as we let more and more things in, more and more the outside world bends to balance. It's very quite amazing how well it works. And the only times I find it slow is when I have a belief that is at odds with me, or I encounter one at odds with me out in the world, and I resist versus opening to it. But remember, I'm only opening to that little tenth, maybe 100th of it, and I allow it to unfold gradually. But what's so amazing is, even though you're just letting in a little bit, it changes very rapidly. Because most things that are in resistance aren't used to being allowed. They're mostly resisted, and so they push harder. Mm-hmm. So that's the problem with shields, you know. You put up a shield and a person doesn't recognize there's a shield out there, but they feel a resistance, so they push harder. And so then you got to build a bigger screen, you know. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So it becomes an argument that's not even verbal.
Yes.
So why not just open? Going out and interacting with others is your fear. That's what you open to start with before you ever go out and interact with others, so that you begin to balance yourself. And then if you happen to find something seemingly too strong outside to ignore, that's the next opportunity to open more deeply and change more until it just is a non-issue.
Mm-hmm. So I think you've answered the other questions as well.
Aha.
Are using shield?
I'm looking too.
And the image of being like a sponge, absorbing. Some empaths feel like they're like sponges, absorbing negativity from others, or people intentionally wanting to dump their energies onto them.
That's a fear. Again, it's a fear. What you fear, generally speaking, seems to show up in your world. Oh no, there's that again. But they're showing up to show you where you're holding, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So you process, oh my gosh, I appear to be like a sponge. Oh my gosh, people appear to be dumping stuff on me. I say appear because the person next to me doesn't seem to have any problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? I'm an empath. They're not. What does that mean? They have, some people would say, a natural shield versus no shield. But again, I would say it's more that they're not sensitive and the empath is. So the empath has to deal with their sensitivity. One of the ways to change that and to no longer be a sponge is to process how it makes them feel they appear to be a sponge. And then wonder what it might be about feeling great no matter who's around. And realizing that they're whole and complete within themselves. That would be a positive statement. We would process the positive statement because likely there's doubt that it can occur, at least in the beginning. And it's just showing another layer of resistance or fear that's there. How can that be? All my friends, see the story? They build a world and they can share with those people in the story. Will their friends change as the story changes? Probably. Mostly because the friends aren't getting the reaction they expect. But they'll make different friends, and or those friends can stay around. But the reaction will be different. They'll have a different relationship with the people around them, period, because they also are different and they react different to certain situations in a positive way. That's the beauty of it all.
Yeah.
And so you begin to learn to just be you. And if within that you're a healer or a searcher on the path, then the Wonder Method will help to balance you and help to balance your clients. If you're just walking around and want all that stuff to stop, then you process for you. And in surprisingly short order for most people, it stops quickly. Mm-hmm. Many people will feel like something's missing and they'll search and they'll find that what they wanted was that drama of being pressed on by others. But as they continue to process, that will gradually drop away and they'll find that they are enough. They are whole within themselves. And their outlook around the world, about the world in general, will change because of that. And they'll redefine themselves. That's the nature of change.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. You're welcome.
So
any other questions that seem to come to the front?
There's this relationship with drama. If you are not being overwhelmed by the outside world, then how does life become more interesting to us?
Oh, well, number one, say you're an artist. You choose to let the feelings come in for your art. You don't choose to let them in when you're not doing your art. Say you're a poet. You let the feelings happen when you're writing your poetry. And you do it from a place of balance and openness so that your creativity is on display. You have access instead of writer's block. Same with the artist. You let in the flow. You join the dance of the artist in you. And you're able to express yourself so much more cleanly and effectively because of it. Because you're not at odds with your environment.
Yeah.
So you become even more complete. And the people you meet are more whole because of it. It's very surprising, but it does happen consistently. Are you willing to step into you? And if that's frightening, that's a great entry point, because I promise you, you're worth it. Yeah. It's great stuff to find you. Yeah.
crying.
Well, it's, many people are not aware of themselves and don't feel necessarily comfortable within. But the surprising thing is you can be amazingly comfortable within and amazingly comfortable with others simply by experiencing yourself. If you feel yourself right now, ever so gently, as if it was, well, let's just put it this way. If you approach the feelings within you at the rate that made you feel absolutely comfortable, go ahead and do it and experience what occurs. So light, so kindly. Yeah. And you can just keep going till you get that shift sensation of an expansion or a change from the wonderment. And there's where you're opening. And you feel open-ended. Why do we choose to leave this place? Because we're focused out here and believe that this needs to be our major focus, independent of this focus. It's not true. It's just a habit. So if you let yourself experience ever so lightly, almost like an afterthought, that little bit of you inside, experience what happens. Very, very light. Don't strive for it because that creates pressure. Striving is the attitude of mind. There's you. Now you can listen to me while experiencing that. Yeah, you can hear just fine. Practicing speaking from here takes more practice just because the act of verbalization is a mental process and requires certain muscles to be tight and certain muscles to be loose to activate the voice box. And we learned a certain way because we are surrounded by people that demonstrated that that's how you speak. It's not how you have to speak. You're allowed to feel inside. In fact, some of the most amazing people you meet will do this naturally. It'll just feel like they're talking just to you. And they're talking that way to everybody. So it touches you in this particular way because they're very whole and they allow you to experience wholeness in the process. How does that feel, Bingz?
Good.
Yeah.
Quiet.
Exactly. It's a sanctuary.
Yes.
But it's not a cage nor a jail.
No. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.